Hey, folks, buckle up, because today we're diving headfirst into the swampy cesspool of economic mismanagement, political grandstanding, and, surprise, surprise, another masterclass in government incompetence. I'm your host, the guy who's had it up to here with policymakers treating our economy like a piñata at a toddler's birthday party. Let's talk about the latest circus in Washington, courtesy of the U.S. Senate, Donald Trump, and their grand plan to gut financial watchdogs while pretending it's all for taxpayer savings. Spoiler alert, it's not. So, grab your coffee, or something stronger, and let's break this down, boss economics style. If you've been paying attention to the news, you'll know that on June 20, 2025, the U.S. Senate's nonpartisan referee, Elizabeth McDonough, dropped a bombshell on the Republican Party's latest attempt to ram through their economic agenda. The GOP, under the banner of Trump's so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, tried to sneak in provisions that would effectively kneecap the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, slash funding for the Office of Financial Research, vaporize the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, and even cut pay for Federal Reserve employees. Sounds like a dream come true for Wall Street fat cats, right? Well, hold your applause, because McDonough ruled that these moves violate budgetary rules and can't be passed with a simple majority in the Senate. Boo-hoo, GOP. Looks like you'll need 60 votes in a 100-seat chamber where you only hold 53. Good luck with that, fellas. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's take a step back and ask ourselves, why does this matter? Why should you, the hard-working taxpayer, the small business owner, or the finance professional care about a bunch of bureaucrats fighting over budgetary rules in Washington? Oh, let me count the ways. This isn't just some arcane political spat, it's a textbook example of how government mismanagement, ideological crusades, and corporate cronyism are driving our economy straight into the ditch. And folks, if you think we're not already in a recession, I've got some oceanfront property in Kansas to sell you. Let's peel back the layers of this onion, shall we? At the surface, this looks like a partisan squabble over budget rules. But dig a little deeper, and you'll see a Pandora's box of economic problems that threaten the stability of our financial system, the livelihoods of everyday Americans, and the very foundation of trust in our markets. Here's the breakdown, from the core issues to the ripple effects. First off, let's talk about the CFPB, the OFR, and the PCAB. These are not just fancy acronyms to throw around at cocktail parties, they're the watchdogs that keep our financial system from turning into a Wild West shootout. The CFPB, created after the 2008 financial crisis, exists to protect consumers from predatory lending, shady banking practices, and outright fraud. Remember those subprime mortgages that tanked the economy? Yeah, the CFPB is the one making sure that doesn't happen again, or at least, it was, until the Trump administration started treating it like a piñata. The OFR, meanwhile, is the nerdy cousin who crunches data to spot systemic risks in the financial system. And the PCAB? It's the sheriff that polices corporate accounting to prevent Enron-style scandals. Now, the GOP wants to slash their budgets, eliminate their authority, and even cut pay for Fed employees. Why? Because, in the words of Senate Banking Committee Chairman Tim Scott, it's all about cutting waste and duplication and saving taxpayer dollars. Oh, please. Spare me the sanctimonious drivel. This isn't about efficiency, it's about deregulation on steroids, giving Wall Street a free pass to run amok while the rest of us pick up the pieces. And here's the kicker, the CFPB doesn't even get its funding from Congress. It gets up to 12% of the Federal Reserve's profits, which means it's not even a line item on the taxpayers tab. So, this whole crusade about saving taxpayer dollars is a flat-out lie. It's like saying you're saving money on groceries by throwing out all the food in your fridge. Brilliant logic, GOP. Now, let's talk about what happens when you got these watchdogs. Spoiler alert, it's not pretty. Without the CFPB, consumers are left defenseless against predatory lenders, credit card companies, and debt collectors. According to the CFPB's own data, the agency has returned over $17.5 billion to consumers since its inception, protecting millions of Americans from financial scams. But under Trump's leadership, the CFPB has been neutered, rulemaking has been scrapped, enforcement actions have been dropped, and staff have been laid off. And now, the GOP wants to finish the job by slashing its budget entirely. Gee, I wonder who benefits from that. Hint, it's not you, me, or the single mom trying to pay off her student loans. The OFR's budget cuts are just as dangerous. This is the agency that warned us about the risks of leveraged loans and corporate debt bubbles, issues that, by the way, are still very much alive in 2025. According to a recent report from the International Monetary Fund, global corporate debt has ballooned to $85 trillion, with the US accounting for a whopping 40% of that total. And guess what? The OFR is one of the few agencies with the data and expertise to spot the next Lehman Brothers-style collapse before it happens. But hey, why bother with pesky things like systemic risk when you can just slash funding and pretend everything's fine? And then there's the PCAB, the guardian of corporate accounting. Remember the Wirecard scandal in Germany, where a $2 billion hole was found in the company's books? Or the Luckin Coffee fraud, where a Chinese company faked $310 million in sales? These are the kinds of shenanigans that CFPB is supposed to prevent in the US. But if the GOP gets its way, this agency will be toast, leaving investors, pension funds, and everyday 401k holders vulnerable to the next big corporate scam. Now, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just about a few budget cuts, it's about a government that's hell-bent on dismantling the very institutions that keep our economy from imploding. And folks, the economy is already on life support. According to the latest data from the Bureau of Economic Analysis, US GDP growth slowed to a measly 1.1% in Q1 2025, down from 2.6% in Q4 2024. Unemployment, which the government loves to tout as low at 4.8%, is a mirage. Once you factor in discouraged workers and the underemployed, the real rate is closer to 9%, per the U6 measure from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And let's not forget inflation, the monster that just won't die. The Consumer Price Index rose 5.2% year-over-year in May 2025, according to the BLS, with core inflation still stubbornly high at 4.8%. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve, under pressure from politicians on both sides, has been flip-flopping on interest rates, raising them to 5.5% in early 2025 only to hint at cuts later this year. Great job, guys, nothing screams economic stability like a central bank playing whack-a-mole with monetary policy. So, here we are, teetering on the edge of a full-blown recession, and what does the government do? Instead of strengthening the institutions that protect consumers, monitor risks, and enforce accountability, they're trying to dismantle them. It's like a firefighter deciding to pour gasoline on a burning building. And don't even get me started on Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which is basically a tax cut and spending bonanza for the ultra-rich, paid for by gutting the safety nets that keep the rest of us afloat. According to the Congressional Budget Office, this bill would add $2.3 trillion to the national debt over the next decade, all while doing nothing to address the structural issues, like wage stagnation, healthcare costs, and crumbling infrastructure, that are actually dragging our economy down. Folks, let's cut through the noise and get to the heart of the matter. This is government mismanagement at its finest. The GOP's obsession with deregulation, tax cuts for the wealthy, and dismantling oversight isn't just bad policy, it's economic vandalism. And the Trump administration, with its track record of gutting the CFPB, rolling back Dodd-Frank protections, and cozying up to Wall Street, is the ringleader of this circus. But don't think the Democrats are innocent bystanders, they've been complicit in this mess too, with their own fair share of corporate pandering and failure to push for meaningful reforms. The result? An economy that's a ticking time bomb, with consumers, workers, and small businesses bearing the brunt of the fallout. And when the next financial crisis hits, and trust me, it's coming, the same politicians who cheered for deregulation will be the first to point fingers and blame everyone but themselves. But here at Boss Economics World, we see through the smoke and mirrors. The real culprit isn't market forces or global headwinds, it's government incompetence, plain and simple. So, what do we do about it? First, we need to hold our elected officials accountable. Call your senators, write to your representatives, and demand that they protect the CFPB, the OFR, and the CFPB. Second, we need to push for real reforms, like reinstating Glass-Steagall, closing tax loopholes for corporations, and investing in infrastructure and education to boost long-term growth. And third, we need to stay informed. The mainstream media might gloss over these issues, but here at Boss Economics World, we'll keep shining a light on the economic dragons lurking in the shadows. Alright, folks, that's all for today's episode of Boss Economics World. If you're as fed up as I am with this economic clown show, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know. And remember, when the government fumbles the economy, it's up to us, the bosses, to call it out. Until next time, stay sharp, stay skeptical, and keep slaying those economic dragons.